So my next guest is Murtaza Haider. He's a Ph.D. professor and associate dean at Ted Rogers School of Management at Toronto Metropolitan University, TMU for short. And in his new column, he's explained how home ownership today doesn't just shape your own financial future, but it actually has a lasting impact on your children's ability to build wealth as well. And as we head toward the federal election with housing affordability at top of everybody's mind, let's unpack what this means for families and future generations. Hi, Murtaza. How are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. So, did your parents' home ownership or lack of it shape your ability to buy a home?
Well, the data from Statistics Canada is quite clear that for Canadians who own homes, their children are 2 to 3 times more likely to own homes. And also the data from Statistics Canada is quite clear that because of home ownership, home owning parents are able to transfer wealth to their children to help them buy homes in times like this when housing affordability is worse off. So the bottom line is that home ownership decisions are not one-off for one generation. They have intergenerational consequences. And for those who can afford to own homes, and I know that many in Canada who are parents are not in the situation where home ownership is even a choice for them. But for those who have this choice and they are contemplating between ownership and renting, they should consider that their choices would have an indirect or direct impact on the choices their children will make 20, 30 years down the road.
So why does it worry you when you see experts advocate that people should aspire to a carefree renter's lifestyle while they invest their savings wisely in the stock market?
I mean, this is quite surprising. It is against data that we have not just in Canada, but also in the U.S. And not only that these experts just say it, they actually write books telling people that you can get wealthier as renters. And there are academics that in my own community who go around and advocate for renting as a permanent lifestyle, even some wondering why Canada cannot be a renting nation. And I'm amazed, I'm kind of surprised because it's not that a little bit of data, all of the data that we have shows that on average, ownership delivers far more financially better outcomes. Now, what happens is that I think the main motivation for others is that under the right circumstances, with the right kind of investment, with the right kind of investment advisor, with the right kind of timing, and everything goes right, and moons and stars and moons align for you, maybe then your investments may deliver better outcomes than owning a home and home as an investment vehicle. But there are lots of ifs and buts and self-discipline that most people, including myself, do not have. And therefore, we see again and again from data that home ownership is allowing people to build wealth, and it's being the primary vehicle for young Canadians. 50% of young Canadians have their primary wealth in home ownership, and there's no way of looking at this data two different ways. And I guess I'm surprised. I just keep reading these books and columns and advocates of invest in equities and whatnot. And I understand that Canadians have invested a lot of money in housing, and it could be invested in different ways in more productive industries. But it is not the job of a mom and pop to spur up Canadian industry. It's the job of the government and big corporations to fix their alignments to be more productive. Now, asking people not to buy home and invest in stock markets because their companies can do better, well, that's too much to ask for ordinary people. If you want to do better as a firm, as a corporation, do it yourself. Don't rely on individuals to do that for you. So my advice for myself and my children will be that if they can afford to own a home, and if there is a choice, and if it is a valid choice, not out of, I say it again and again, that there are many people in Canada, many families where home ownership is no longer a choice. They have been priced out of the market. But if you have a choice, then think carefully, look at the data.
Perfect. That makes sense. It's funny. I love how you put it where if the stars and moon align to mean that you're going to make so much money in the stock market that you don't need to own a home, that's a great way of putting it. So, let's talk about the parents that do own a home. So should those parents feel pressure to help their kids buy a home, even if it means they're tapping into their own retirement savings?
Well, it's a decision parents have to make. I mean, you can. It's a conversation they would have with their own children, whether to pass the savings and equity now or after they have passed away. And I think the best thing to do would be to speak to with an accountant or an advisor who does estate planning.
Right.
But I think many people, the data is showing that in 2023, relative to 2019, the gifts or transfers of wealth from family and friends to younger cohorts so that they can buy homes increased significantly. That amount went from something like $70,000 on average to $80,000+ a year. Per person, not per year. And what it means is that people who have own homes and parents who have homes and who have equity, they have been helping their children with larger gifts and support. It could be a gift, it could be a loan. It could be either way, because parents still have to plan for their own retirement and for themselves to be retired comfortably for as long as they need to. So again, I'm not giving retirement advice. That's not my job. That's the job of professional accountants and others. But I'm simply saying that the data clearly shows that home ownership has intergenerational impact. And the way we would see it, I would call it the intergenerational middle class trap. That if you are renters and you continue to rent, even if you have a choice to own, it may impose a middle class trap on your children who would have to start from scratch in their time to build equity towards owning a home. But if you can own a home, then that equity goes into your children, who then can springboard into home ownership because of the decisions you make.
Murtaza, thank you so much. That was very helpful, and hopefully, yes, people can see sort of how the decisions that they make in this generation will certainly affect their next generation, whether they choose to rent or own. Thank you so much for being here. We've run out of time, but I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks so much. That was Murtaza Haider, Ph.D. professor and associate dean at the Ted Rogers School of Management at TMU, just letting us know in terms of how intergenerational wealth actually plays a role, whether you choose to rent or own, and how that's going to affect your kids' lives as well too, in terms of if you're going to be able to help them to own a place as well.